Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem. This is a postmortem of my Blitz game number 258. I was black here. My opponent kicked off with d4 and I played d5. And he goes with knight f3, the second choice after c4, avoiding the queen's gambit. And so I play knight f6, just mimicking his move and waiting to see how he wants to play. He could still play c4 here and go into a queen's gambit system, but he chooses e3. So right away he's blocking in his light squared bishop, and that indicates he's going to play a Colle system, or perhaps a Colle Zuckertort. With the bishop outside the pawn chain, that's a London system, or if it goes to g5, it's a Tory system. And if he plays this pawn to if he plays this pawn to b3 and bishop b2, then that's the Colle Zuckertort. But we get into a regular Colle system after c5 and c3. Just shoring up his center. Now at some point I need to defend the pawn. I don't know if it has to be right here, but the top choice is e6, which would defend it with the bishop, or what I played, knight bd7. Another way to defend it. And then he plays bishop d3. My idea with defending with the knight is that I want to allow the bishop to fianchetto, so I continue with g6. That was my plan, and he goes h4. And now we're out of the opening book, so let's just take a look at this. From the notation tab, I'm going to leave the chess engine off here because I have some tactical quizzes I want to pop later on in this video. So I'll just report on what the engine had to recommend. Right now I played h5 just to stop his advance, but it seems it's not really needed at this point. He can't play h5 because I will take it, and the exchange sack is no good here because my king hasn't castled, and so there's just not enough to attack over there. So, and he also can't play g4 to support h5 at this point because I've got g4 covered. So with the knight covering these squares, there's no rush to play the move h5, and I should probably just continue with bishop g7 or queen c7. Those are the engine recommendations. Okay, I played this anyway instead, and he plays here bishop g7, just continuing with my development. You know, having played this, it's not like it's an awful move. It just creates some targets, and I have to be more careful. And I've given up some of my advantage. If I had played correctly, I would have more of an advantage at this point. But white plays some strange moves here and gives me an advantage back. So, for example, this move a3 here doesn't seem to do a whole lot. I thought he was going to follow up with b5, but he never played that during the game, and it's hard to see what else this move is doing. It's defending the square b4, but I don't have a piece that's going to land there anyway, so just not clear to me. Okay, I castle, and he goes knight g5, and now I have to worry about ideas like a sacrifice here or a sacrifice here, and we'll see this later in the game. So let's just play on a few moves. I take here, he takes back with the e-pawn, and then I go on with e5. This was one of my main ideas at this setup. The knight here supports both those squares, e5 and c5, and I'm going to try and undermine his strong pawn triangle, and he's wasted some time with these pawn moves, so his king is still in the center, and I should get some good play as a result of that. Anyway, my opponent decides to preempt my plan, and he tries bishop takes g6. So one other thing white could consider here, if he's going to sacrifice, he could consider this sacrifice. And if I take with the rook, then bishop here, and maybe has some compensation for the piece. But taking with the king is pretty strong. Now he can't grab the pawn on g6 without sacrificing another piece, and there's just not enough there. So this is good for black, and the way he played it, this is also good for black. But it did have an idea here, which is after bishop takes, pawn takes, the knight comes into e6, forking the queen and the rook. So he gets some material back. He's not sacking a whole piece. He's giving up two pieces for a rook and a pawn. But this trade is still good for black. The two pieces are just worth more, particularly at this early stage of the game. Now right here I didn't play the strongest way. It's the recommendation here from the engine is to go ahead and take immediately on d5, so that he's forced to move his king or interpose his queen. Say he chooses to move the king, and then take back the knight with the knight, leaving the bishop on this good diagonal and the queen here. And this looks pretty good for black. That's the strongest way to play it. The way I played it I took here with the bishop. For some reason, I guess I didn't really consider taking with the knight. Maybe I didn't notice it was under attack. There's so many, there were already many choices, right? I could take with the king, the bishop, the queen. Taking with the king exposes it somewhat. Taking with the queen gets the queen off this good file. Taking with the bishop gets the bishop off this good file, so diagonal rather. There's a diagonal with some tension on it, and the bishop is doing some good there. So that's why taking with the knight is best. But I took with the bishop, and so I'm not completely winning here, but he should probably just castle at this point. This move, this knight move gives me a tempo, and I have a pretty strong edge after this. King f1, and because of the tempo on the king, I get to grab another pawn. So I'm pretty much 2 pawns up at this point, basically. And I play b6 to try and get my bishop into the game. I didn't want to move the knight just yet. I hadn't quite figured out where it was going, and this bishop has a good diagonal here and maybe here. So my opponent played queen c2. I get in this... oh, I play king g7, right? He's attacking my g-pawn. And then he goes bishop g5, pinning the knight. And I throw in, before I unpin, I throw in this move bishop a6 check, which forces his king back. There's no good way to block that check. So all of this is pretty much so far so good. Queen d6. Yeah, I'm just keeping my advantage here, unpinning the knight. And he continues the knight d4. A little bit of a strange move because the knight doesn't have a lot of targets from d4. Although it does stop me from advancing my d-pawn. So, but I get my rook in the center, and he plays rook h3, trying to get his other rook in the game. And now I go knight e4. So all this is okay, but he plays rook e1, and here I don't play the best move. So what I play is the move bishop e7, and that allows him to exchange and double rooks on the e file. The engine has a couple interesting suggestions of ways to play here. This isn't exactly a tactical quiz because there's no one right answer. There's a bunch of different good moves for black in this position. But if you want to pause the video and think about this position for a while, maybe you can find a couple good moves for black. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show some of the answers. So if you want to think about it some more, pause the video. One answer, which is kind of interesting, an interesting tactical response, is to take the bishop here. And now this leaves my rook hanging. That was one of the concerns, was that my rook is undefended. But after grabbing the bishop, I can then take a rook, and then he takes my knight back, and I've gained a rook and a bishop, and he's gained a rook and a knight. So materially, it's an even exchange, and getting rid of the material from the board helps me because I'm at a material advantage already, and it also weakened his position around his king. So that would be one good way to play, and probably the most forcing. Another way to play, which is equally good, or nearly so, is just to move the knight here. Just retreat the knight and defend the rook with the knight. If he exchanges, you can take back with the knight, or if he takes the rook, you take with the knight. So all this is good for black, and there were other possibilities there as well. The move I played is not so good, as I said, because he takes, and then he doubles rooks on the e-file. And now he really has some pressure here. I have to be a bit careful. I still have an advantage, so I haven't blown my advantage, but it's diminished from what it could have been. Okay, so I unpin immediately with rook f7, fine move. And now the way for white to continue and get the most out of the position is to play f3 and chase my knight away. And the problem is this square here is weak, and his rooks are threatening to invade. And so that's why it's important also when the knight is kicked that it has a square c5 that actually helps defend. So it could go something like this: knight here, knight takes, rook takes, and now fortunately I have this queen check here. Buys me a little bit of time, and then I need to defend the rook here. Ah, yeah, that's right, knight here to defend the pawn. That was the chess engine recommendation. So that this is good enough. White maintains the advantage of 2 pieces versus a rook. But but white has gained quite a bit here. He's got a lot of activity. He's not killing me immediately, so black has the material advantage and should go on to win. But definitely a much stiffer resistance than what my opponent played. So in this position, instead of pawn to f3, he played knight to f3, and now I'm doing pretty good once again. Go knight d to f6, and just bringing my knight forward and also making a threat of knight to g5. My opponent ignores that and plays knight g4, and this is actually a losing move because now I play knight g5 with multiple threats. But he made a threat too. He took my rook, and so I had calculated the sequence ahead of time. Knight takes, and I have knight takes, and take the queen, and I figured I was coming out ahead, or at least getting rid of a lot of material, not coming out behind. But I was wrong, and actually in this position right here, right after knight takes, here let's erase these arrows. And instead of following my pre-programmed sequence, I should have stopped to think here, because black has a very good move here. So why don't you pause the video and stare at the position until you find the best move for black. There's one definite best move here. Okay, I am going to give the answer away now. The answer is queen to h2 checkmate. So that is pretty interesting. I'd kind of forgotten about this bishop over here on the side of the board, but it's performing a very important job blocking the king's escape. And so that would have ended the game right there. So what's the lesson here? One is, you may have planned some sequence of moves. And this was the sequence I had planned. And then when you get there, you just play them through. But you should really stop and think at each position, is there something else going on here? Do I have other moves? So that's one lesson. The other one is, my opponent was in a bit of time trouble here, and he was moving quickly, and so I was sort of moving fast too. And there was no need to. I had a couple minutes left on my clock still. So that's the other lesson here, is don't let yourself get caught up in your opponent's time trouble. So I took on e3, which is actually a blunder and loses. If I want to stay in the game, I need to take here. And then this game continues once again with two pieces for the rook. But I played knight here, and now white has a move that wins the game. So this is another tactical quiz. Why don't you see if you can figure out the winning move for white. This one's a little harder to see, so pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away right now. The answer is queen takes knight. Very strange move. I was really stunned when I saw that, because of course the knight is defended. But you have to remember there's all these things hanging here. My queen is hanging, and he's already grabbed a rook and I've grabbed a rook. So the material balance right now is I have two pieces for his rook, and we each have a queen and a knight. So he grabs the knight. If I want to stay even, then I have to grab a knight. And then he can grab another knight, and I don't have anything else to grab, and I'm just down the exchange. So that's one way to play it. Okay, well, how about if I take his queen? Then he takes my queen, and now I've lost a piece somehow. I have two pieces left, and he's got two pieces left. So let's back up. Oh yeah, because in this position I still had my edge, but he grabbed a knight. I grab a queen, and then he grabs. Cancel that. I grab a queen, and then he grabs my queen. So I've lost a piece there, and my knight is hanging, so I need to retreat it. And so we'll get into a position like this, perhaps, where he's got a rook against a bishop and the pawns are even. Also a winning advantage. Even though his pawns are a little bit scattered, it's hard for my bishop to attack these guys. They're on the opposite color already, so I don't have a lot of targets here. And his rook is going to get onto the open files and just have a field day, and he should win this one pretty easily. So let's back up. So I think that's all the possibilities. I either take the queen or take the knight. Or if I move my queen, that's another possibility. Then again, he just picks up another piece there by grabbing my knight. So I'm just losing the exchange, or I will go down the exchange after this sequence in the best case. So fortunately for me, my opponent was in time trouble, and he just played the automatic rook takes e3. And now I take his knight, and he played rook f3 check, and I go king g7. And then he lost on time at this point. He was playing on the increment for the last few moves. So this position is actually about even. The pawns are even. I still have 2 pieces for the rook, but the engine evaluates it as only a slight advantage to black. So I guess white has enough activity with his queen and his rook to probably hold a draw here. So I was lucky to win this game, even though I was totally winning for a lot of the game. In the end, I kind of blew it. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. There's a lot of instructive lessons there, I think, particularly about the psychology of those blunders towards the end. And I hope you enjoyed the tactics. If you have any comments, leave them in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.